Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. The bribery scandal in the European Parliament is entering a phase where the defendants begin to attack from their prison cell. The main protagonist of the scandal, the former vice president of the European Parliament, Ewa Kaili, already wants to sue MEP Jacek Saryusz-Wolski for his words on the air of TV Republika, in which he stated that the counterintelligence of member countries was interested in the Greek woman in the context of her contacts with Russia.
Ms. Kaili was under surveillance by the intelligence services, 2 member states, and the Belgian police. Only then did they step in. She was under this observation in connection with relations, not with Qatar, but with Russia. The former vice president of the European Parliament, Ewa Kaili, wants to sue Jacek Saryusz-Wolski for these exact words. One of the first agencies to report her intention was Russia's RIA Novosti, which is considered a propaganda tube of the Kremlin. This is a lie, slander, and seriously harms Ms. Ewa Kaili. We will turn to court on this matter. I said that she was being watched by intelligence, basically counterintelligence, because of her Russian contacts, whereas what she is talking about, she implies that I was talking about bribery or bribes, whereas I was kind of talking as part of a bigger picture. Ewa Kaili was detained in December. Investigators found 600,000 euros in cash in her apartment. Initial information indicated that the money came from Qatar. However, a Russian threat also emerged in the investigation. She damaged her own good name by being involved in a practice where money did not fit in suitcases, bribe money. According to Law and Justice MEP Dominik Tarczyński, we are dealing with a corruption spy scandal in which Moroccan intelligence chief Yassin Mansouri played a key role. This is not Morocco Gate, this is not Qatar Gate, this is Russia Gate. Why? That's because the $300 million that was transferred from Russia for lobbying in 20 countries mainly went to the European Union. It is not a coincidence that Putin's daughter spent her multi-day wedding in Morocco. Antonio Panzeri is another politician who has been detained in the case. The former Italian MEP last week decided to cooperate with the Belgian prosecutor's office. Panzeri was a co-founder of Fight Impunity, an organization that authored resolutions against Poland in the European Parliament. When will there be repeated resolutions against Poland? I have been demanding publicly since the beginning of this scandal. I was in Brussels at the time and lived there. I saw this venom, ideological venom targeted towards Poland. Experts argue that the disclosed scandal is just the tip of the iceberg. These are the kind of cases where a citizen of the European Union can become alienated from the European ideology just because people who should be clean, who should set an example, who teach us about the rule of law and hold us accountable for it, these people come into conflict with the law. This is not the first corruption scandal we are facing in the EU Parliament. CIA U.S. intelligence has counted at least $300 million that Russia has spent on corrupting Western European officials and politicians. At least, because they said that only about the $300 million they know exactly who where. Apparently, this is not process knowledge, so to speak. The Daily Rzeczpospolita reported Monday that the names of Polish MEPs were also being mentioned in the context of the scandal in the European Parliament. According to journalists, it was supposed to be about Law and Justice MEPs. However, the reports turned out to be untrue.
2 people were killed and 7 injured in a gas explosion in Katowice, Poland. A 3-story building in the Szopienice district collapsed. More than a dozen firefighting units took part in the rescue operation. 3 people were taken to hospitals. 2 children, aged 3 and 4, were taken to a pediatric hospital for examination.
78 years ago, together with my parents and younger brother, we ended up here in this place. I was 11 years old. My brother was 7 years old. When from the transit camp in Pruszków, they herded us into freight cars. Someone shouted, "Where will we go?" The answer was given, "To a village near Kraków." We were the first transport from the Warsaw Uprising, from the first days. We rode for a long time. My father, all the way, watched the route of the train through the gaps of the wagon wall. In the evening, we drove up to some buildings, and then I heard my dad's voice of despair. He grabbed his head, banged it against the wagon wall, and cried out, "God, where have we come? Where have we come?"
Uderzał nią o ścianę wagonu i wołał: Boże, gdzie my przyjechaliśmy? Gdzie my przyjechaliśmy?
Dziś tu stoimy z wami, drodzy ocalali.
Today we stand here with you, dear survivors, who have passed through this darkest path of the war, and it is difficult for us to stand here, harder than in previous years. War first violates treaties, then borders, and finally people. Civilian victims, dehumanized, intimidated, humiliated, do not die by accident. They are hostages to this war megalomania. Warsaw Wola, Zamojszczyzna, Oradour, and Lidice today are called Bucha, Irpień, Hostomel, Mariupol, and Donetsk.
Irpień, Hostomel, Mariupol i Donetsk.
Climate and Environment Minister Anna Moskwa assures that the Polish government will not agree to extend the European Union's competence to Polish forest issues. One of the European Parliament's committees wants to transfer forestry issues from national to EU competence.
The EU Commission on the Environment, Public Health and Food Safety has given the green light to amend the treaties and exclude forest management, parts of water management and land management, among others, from the jurisdiction of member states. There is a sentence there that the European Commission gives its recommendations, which the state is obliged to implement. There are no deadlines, no details. If we look at it from the perspective of jurisprudence, of the courts, this is a very strong and dangerous provision. In order for the changes to the treaties to take effect, all member states must agree. The Polish government's decision on this issue will be a strong one, a veto. For years, a large part of these forests have had an economic function, which of course has an impact on jobs and exports. Forest land occupies more than 30% of the area in Poland. State Forestry Director Józef Kubica points out the economic consequences of treaty changes. Many questions remain that we cannot answer. What about the timber industry? What about the plants? That's almost 500,000 people. This is an army of people. What about the Polish furniture industry, which furnishes all of Europe? According to the Lisbon Treaty, forestry is decided solely by the member country. The European Union, by interpreting the treaties, keeps expanding, and that's what we're dealing with, an expansion already informal, not only by changes to the treaties, and that's what we're seeing in, for example, related activities. They call it the biodiversity strategy, and realistically, it's about already entering the competence of forestry, and forestry is the exclusive competence of the member state. It is the exclusive competence of Poland. The opinion of the European Commission for the Environment has already gone to the Constitutional Committee, which is expected to draft a resolution. This is what happened at the Environment Committee, an attempt, of course, to change the European treaties, and in parallel, however, an attempt is being made to change European law through regulations, such as the biodiversity regulation, and there are provisions there too that could actually make us no longer sovereign when it comes to managing natural resources. A total of 54 MEPs voted in favor of the proposal. Among them were Bartosz Arłukowicz and Ewa Kopacz of the Civic Platform, as well as Adam Jarubas of the Polish People's Party.
On January 27, 1945, Red Army soldiers opened the gates of the Auschwitz German camp. The extremely exhausted prisoners, of whom there were still about 7,000, including half a thousand children, welcomed them as liberators. Established in 1940, Auschwitz and later Auschwitz II-Birkenau became a site for the extermination of at least 1 million people, mostly Jews, but also Poles, Roma, Soviet prisoners of war, and people of other nationalities.
180 firefighters and 49 rescue vehicles took part in the operation. Currently, we have 7 people rescued from the building. 5 were taken to the hospital for observation, and around 3 p.m., a second fatality was extracted. The first fatality was found around 12:30 p.m. At the moment, firefighters are still operating. We are still working on the debris. We still have to manually excavate all the construction materials too, so that they don't pose a danger to rescuers. We will still be working late into the night.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But for me, it's have a wonderful weekend.